All through the summer of 1940, battles raged in the skies above England as the Royal Air Force and the German Luftwaffe fought for Britain. On the 17th of September, Hitler was forced to postpone his invasion of Britain until further notice. Victory in the Battle of Britain completed what the evacuation of Dunkirk had begun. It restored British spirits. The war was now being fought at long range. Both sides concentrated initially on purely military targets. But in August 1940, Britain's RAF bombed Berlin. In retaliation, an enraged Hitler ordered the German Luftwaffe to raze British cities to the ground. In November 1940, three-quarters of Coventry had been flattened. Yet in December 1940, RAF bomber pilot Peter Rutter was still limited in what he was permitted to attack.
We weren't allowed to bomb anything, really. That's what it really boiled down to. We carried bombs, but we could only bomb military targets, which posed no danger whatsoever to civilians in the neighbourhood.
Although the RAF were aiming for military targets, they did occasionally hit civilian ones.
At first, of course, there were a great many air raid warnings, and you would go to the cellar. But after a time, you stopped taking it so seriously because relatively little happened. If something was smashed up, then it would be, let's say, from the 4th to the 2nd floor. It was only part of a building that was destroyed. And in the early days, you'd go and have a look and say, "Oh, how terrible." But you didn't really think that this would happen to you.
There were cases when you couldn't find your primary target or your secondary target, and it may be even that you couldn't find anything else to bomb either. It was quite an easy situation to be in. And the orders then were to bring your bombs home. You had to bring them back and land with them.
75% of RAF bombing missions were failing to hit their targets. It was much harder for the RAF to navigate to Germany, find the target, drop their bombs, and still have enough fuel to return to Britain than it was for the Luftwaffe to fly out of France and hit British targets.
Unser Ziel waren immer militärische Ziele.
But our targets were always military targets. Of course, in the circumstances of the time, and this was the same for the Royal Air Force and Bomber Command, with the methods we had for aiming the bombs, for finding the targets at night, there was no avoiding. Even when the target was lit up with flares, the possibility of bombs falling on either side of the target. And as a result, the civilian population suffered too, of course.
Zivilbevölkerung in Mitleidenschaft gezogen.
The 29th of December 1940, it was the worst raid up till then. Fires began around St. Paul's, and then the heavy bombs started. And we had finished serving the firemen with their tea and twopenny bars of Cadbury's chocolate. And I was astonished a few days later when I read the papers. There were pictures of St. Paul's surrounded by flames and smoke. It looked as though this great ship was sinking. We were on the front steps serving tea when those pictures were taken.
I remember my sister and I going to a cinema, in Clapham North, it would have been, Pavilion, Clapham North. And there was a lot of noise going on outside, bombing and so on. And when we emerged, it really was very frightening, because it was the night they bombed the Docklands. And it was as if the whole of London was on fire. The whole sky was red, and that was quite frightening.
We had a big gas holder at a sports ground just at the end of the road, and I saw a bomber come. I think it was a Stuka dive bomber, but I can't be sure. And I saw the bomb leave the plane and hit the gas holder. And there was an enormous explosion and flare, and my mother said there'll be no dinner. We didn't call it lunch. There'll be no dinner today. The gas has gone off.
Despite more than 3,700 British civilian casualties in December alone, Londoners were doing their best to carry on as normal.
One was young in those days, and one worked hard and played hard. Spent a good deal of time in a nightclub called the 400, where one didn't hear the noise outside.
All over London, servicemen flocked to nightclubs. Among them was Frenchman Leon Wilson, who was evacuated from Dunkirk and had joined the British Army. He was at a dance in London's Astoria.
I went downstairs, right down, and I could see a lot of soldiers of all different Polish or whatever it was, and I could see quite a lot of young ladies.
I sat down downstairs, and people came up and asked me to dance. However, being not quite 5 foot and sitting, nobody could see how tall I was, and I'd got this great lanky French soldier who was well over 6 foot, and I must have been dancing with my nose in his belly button, and I was glad when that was over. I sat myself down again, and then...
And I just looked at one, and I thought, I'm going to try. She's the one which I'm after. That was in my mind.
Suddenly, Leon looked at my friend and I thought, oh, well, she's a bigger girl, he'll ask her to dance. And instead of that, he asked me, and we danced the whole afternoon.
You know, I said goodbye, I kissed her, and I said, I'll see you tomorrow.
And the next day, he came to find me. And we didn't go out on that day. As Leon said, we had lunch at home, and my parents were delighted.
You would sometimes go to work that I did on 88 past to Whitehall, and you'd go in a complete different way round because of the bomb craters, and often they were drivers who'd been brought in from the Midlands and so on, and we'd have to get out and show them which way to go.
And we went round the corner to get the bus, and the conductor said, sorry, but you full up, you'll have to wait for the next one. Well, the bus services were, of course, very good in those days. We got on the next one. And there was an air raid warning again. We were turned off halfway in the city and put into a little street shelter. But the next day I heard that the number 8 bus that we should have got on was bombed at Liverpool Street.